Assume this scenario. A young emperor sits alone in his tent, writing by candlelight, while his armies rest. Despite commanding the most powerful empire in history, he writes not of conquest or glory, but of the daily struggle to master himself. The impediment to action advances action, he pens carefully. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius didn't know his private journals would survive 2,000 years, inspiring millions. He knew that true success, the kind that sustains itself through chaos and challenge, comes from within, and he wasn't alone in this wisdom. Today, we're going to unlock 6 ancient secrets of success, habits so powerful they've transformed lives across 2 millennia. But before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how some people seem unshakable, while others crumble under pressure? These rare individuals grow stronger. What's their secret? The answer lies in a philosophy that shaped emperors and enslaved people, a wisdom that turns obstacles into opportunities. I'm talking about Stoicism, but not the cold, emotionless Stoicism you might have heard about. No, this is the real deal. The practical philosophy that's quietly shaped some of history's greatest achievers. And here's what's fascinating. When you study the habits of highly successful people today, whether they're billionaire entrepreneurs, championship athletes, or groundbreaking artists, you'll find they're unconsciously following these same ancient principles. But here's the thing. Most people get it backwards. They chase success like it's something out there to be caught. The Stoics knew better. They understood that real success is built from the inside out, through daily habits that transform who you are. Let's start with the first habit. Hard work, but not in the way you might think. Imagine a young man in ancient China. Every day, he would stare at a massive mountain near his village. While others saw an immovable obstacle, he saw something different. He grabbed a pickaxe and began chipping away at the mountain. People laughed. "You'll never move that mountain," they said. "Impossible!" The old man smiled and replied, "I may not finish in my lifetime, but the mountain is getting smaller every day, while my determination grows stronger. And I have sons, and they will have sons. The mountain doesn't stand a chance." This story traveled through Chinese history as the tale of the foolish old man who moved mountains. But most people miss something. It's not about the mountain. It's about what happens to you when you chip away at your mountain every single day. Epictetus, a formerly enslaved person who became one of history's greatest philosophers, put it this way: "Don't tell me what a man's principles are. Tell me what he does, and I'll tell you what his principles are." This is where modern hustle culture gets it wrong. It's not about working yourself to exhaustion. It's about showing up daily with purpose, knowing that each small action reshapes your circumstances and character. Think about that for a moment. Every time you choose the harder path, the early morning, the extra rep, the difficult conversation, you're not just working. You're building something far more valuable than success. You're building the internal strength that makes success inevitable. Now, let's talk about the second habit, patience. But I'm going to share a story you've probably never heard, one that changed the course of Arabic literature. Al-Mutanabi, now considered one of the greatest Arab poets, spent years of his youth wandering the deserts of Syria. He wasn't just seeking inspiration. He was learning the hardest kind of patience. Living among Bedouin tribes, he watched how they survived in the harshest environment on earth. The desert, he realized, doesn't care about your timeline. It demands patience not as a virtue, but as a necessity for survival. Years later, when he wrote his most famous lines, he didn't just create poetry. He captured a truth about success that most people never grasp. The desert knows me well, the night and the mounted men, the battle and the sword, the paper and the pen. What was he really saying? That mastery, true lasting success, requires you to embrace the waiting, the learning, and the seemingly endless preparation. Just like the desert tribes knew that rushing across the dunes would only exhaust their camels, you must understand that rushing towards success often takes you further from it. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, wrote letters that would influence generations. In one, he observed, "No good thing renders its possessor happy unless they're prepared to lose it." Think about that. Real success, the kind that doesn't leave you constantly afraid of losing it, requires the patience to build foundations that can't be shaken. Look at any overnight success story, dig deeper, and you'll find years of patient preparation. The entrepreneur who seemed to come out of nowhere. They spent 5 years testing and failing. The artist who suddenly made it. They were practicing their craft while everyone else was sleeping. But here's the key that most people miss. Patience isn't passive. It's not about sitting around waiting for success. It's about finding joy in the process of becoming. It's about understanding that every skill you're mastering, every relationship you're building, and every small win you're accumulating are all coming together to create something greater than you can imagine. The Stoics had a powerful visualization exercise for this. They would imagine time as a river, constantly flowing. You can't grab the water and make it move faster, but you can build stronger vessels to navigate it, better tools to use it, and a deeper understanding to work with it rather than against it. So ask yourself, what if everything you're experiencing right now, the struggles, the setbacks, the seemingly slow progress, is not delaying your success, but preparing you for a level of success you couldn't handle without this preparation? Remember, the same heat that melts butter hardens steel. Your challenges aren't your enemies. They're the tools forging you into someone capable of sustaining success when it comes. Now, let's talk about something that most success gurus conveniently leave out: sacrifice, the third habit that sets Stoic achievers apart from dreamers. There's an ancient Japanese tale about a young samurai who sought out a Zen master to learn the secret of success. The master invited him for tea. As they sat, the master kept pouring tea into the samurai's cup. The cup filled, then overflowed. Yet the master kept pouring. Tea spilled everywhere. Finally, the samurai couldn't stay silent. "Master, the cup is overflowing. No more will go in." The master stopped pouring and smiled. "You are like this cup, so full of your own opinions, desires, and ambitions. How can you learn unless you first empty your cup?" This story isn't just about learning. It's about the fundamental truth of sacrifice that every truly successful person discovers. To gain something new, you must first create space by letting go of something else. Epictetus captured this perfectly when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Think about that for a moment. Are you willing to look foolish while learning? To give up your comfort zone? To sacrifice your current identity for the person you could become? But here's where most people get sacrifice wrong. They think it's about giving up things they love. That's not it at all. True sacrifice is about loving something else more. It's about having such a clear vision of what you want to become that letting go of lesser things feels natural. Let me share a story from ancient Africa that captures this perfectly. In Mali, a king named Mansa Musa lived and became the wealthiest person in human history. But before he was king, he was a student of wisdom. His teachers told him a truth that shaped his life. A bird that wants to fly high must first let go of the branch. Think about that. The branch isn't bad. In fact, it's comfortable and safe. But if you never let go of it, you'll never know how high you can soar. Modern research actually backs this up. Studies show that our brains are wired to hold on to what we have. It's called the endowment effect. We value things more simply because they're ours. This made sense for survival in ancient times, but today, this instinct often holds us back from greater achievements. The Stoics understood this at a deep level. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "Get rid of the judgment. Get rid of the 'I am hurt.' You get rid of the hurt itself." He was talking about emotional sacrifice, letting go of the stories we tell ourselves that keep us small. But let's get practical. What does this mean for you right now? It means that success requires clarity about what you're willing to give up. It could be the comfort of sleeping in. It could be the safety of a job you've outgrown. It could be the identity of being the person who never fails because they never honestly try. Here's a powerful question the Stoics would ask. What are you holding on to that's holding you back? Now let's connect this to our fourth habit, consistency, because sacrifice without consistency is just a temporary change. But when you combine them, that's when magic happens. There's a fascinating story from ancient China about how bamboo grows. For the first 4 years after planting, nothing appears above ground. Nothing. The farmer must consistently water and tend to apparently empty soil. The bamboo was building an elaborate root system underground during those 4 years. Then, in the 5th year, the bamboo suddenly shoots up 90 feet in just 6 weeks. The question is, did the bamboo grow 90 feet in 6 weeks, or did it grow 90 feet in 5 years? This is where most people's understanding of consistency fails them. They see the shot rising 90 feet and think, what a miracle. They don't see the 4 years of consistent, invisible growth happening beneath the surface. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught this principle through an unexpected metaphor. He said that philosophy, and by extension, any pursuit of excellence, should be like a fertile field, not a garden of pretty flowers, but a field that produces consistent, reliable nourishment. But here's what's fascinating. Modern neuroscience has proven that consistency literally reshapes your brain. Every time you repeat an action, you strengthen neural pathways. This process, called myelination, is like paving a dirt road in your mind. The more you use it, the smoother and faster the road becomes. The Stoics didn't know about neuroscience but understood this truth through observation. Musonius Rufus, known as the Roman Socrates, said, "Habit is strengthened by practice, and more practice makes it stronger still." He taught that excellence isn't an act, but a habit formed through countless repetitions. Let me share a powerful story about consistency from the Native American tradition. An elder tells his grandson about 2 wolves fighting inside every person. One wolf represents fear, anger, and self-doubt. The other represents courage, kindness, and perseverance. The grandson asks, which wolf wins? The elder replies, the one you feed consistently. This brings us to a crucial point about consistency that most people miss. It's not about perfection. It's about being persistent. The Stoics had a practice called returning to the path. They knew they would sometimes stray from their principles. The key wasn't to never fall, but to always get back up. Think about water flowing down a mountain. It doesn't move in a straight line. It adapts. It flows around obstacles and never stops moving toward its destination. That's true consistency. Epictetus put it beautifully. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. This brings us to a powerful truth about consistency. It's not just about doing the same things. It's about becoming the same person, your best self, regardless of circumstances. When you're tired, when you're discouraged, when no one is watching, those are the moments that define your consistency. Consider this. Every day, you're either building the habit of keeping your word to yourself or breaking it. Every time you say you'll do something and follow through, you're not just accomplishing a task, but strengthening your character. You're becoming someone who can be relied upon, starting with relying upon yourself. The Japanese have a concept called kaizen, continuous improvement through small, consistent steps. But they also have a more profound principle called danshari, the art of decluttering your life to focus on what truly matters. When you combine these ideas with Stoic wisdom, you get something powerful. The understanding that consistency isn't about doing more things, but about doing the right things repeatedly with full attention and dedication. As we wrap up this section on sacrifice and consistency, ask yourself, what one small action, if done consistently, would transform your life over the next year? What would you need to sacrifice to make that consistency possible? Remember, the path to extraordinary achievement is built on ordinary days, consistently invested in your chosen direction. Now, we arrive at our fifth habit, discipline, but not as disciplined as you might think. The Stoics understood something more profound about the discipline that modern self-help often misses entirely. Let me share a story from ancient Greece that captures this perfectly. You've probably heard of Odysseus, the legendary hero who survived a decade-long journey home after the Trojan War. But one part of his story particularly matters for us today. As Odysseus approached the island of the Sirens, whose enchanting songs had lured countless sailors to their deaths, he did something remarkable. Instead of relying on willpower alone, he had his crew tie him to the mast and fill their ears with wax. He created a system of discipline that made failure virtually impossible. This wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Proper discipline isn't about constant struggle. It's about creating environments and systems that make success almost inevitable. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who began life as an enslaved person and ended it as one of history's most outstanding teachers, put it this way: no man is free who is not master of himself. But here's what's fascinating. He taught that mastery comes not from fighting yourself every moment, but from understanding and working with your nature. Consider the story of Damo, daughter of Pythagoras. When her father died, he entrusted her with his manuscripts, making her promise never to sell them. She lived in poverty, but kept them safe her entire life, saying, "I would rather die in poverty obeying my father's wishes than sell them for any price." This wasn't just stubborn determination. It was clarity of purpose so profound that it made discipline automatic. Modern psychology calls this choice architecture, setting up your environment so that good decisions become the default. The Stoics were practicing this 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote about placing his bed on the floor to make sleeping in less tempting. He wasn't fighting his desire for comfort. He was removing the option entirely. But here's where most people get discipline wrong. They think it's about restriction, about saying no. Real discipline is about saying yes to something bigger. It's about having a vision so compelling that it pulls you forward instead of you having to push yourself. There's an ancient Chinese story about the archer Yi, who spent years practicing his art. One day, someone asked him, "What if you miss the target?" Yi replied, "A master archer is not concerned with hitting the target. He is concerned with perfecting his form. Perfect the form, and hitting the target becomes natural." This is true discipline, not the forced march of willpower, but the natural flow of dedicated practice. When you understand this, discipline stops being a punishment and becomes liberation. But there's something else the Stoics understood about discipline that's crucial for success. It's not just about controlling actions. It's about controlling reactions. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This is the discipline of the mind, and it's far more powerful than mere physical discipline. Which brings us to our final habit, self-confidence. But not the shallow self-confidence of modern social media. We're talking about something much deeper, what the Stoics called self-sufficiency, the unshakable knowledge of your worth and capabilities. Let me tell you about Zainab al-Ghazali, a 20th century Egyptian activist who spent years in prison for her beliefs. In her darkest moments, she recalled the story of Prophet Yusuf, who said, even in prison, "My Lord has made it good for me." This wasn't blind optimism. It was profound self-confidence based on the understanding that external circumstances don't define your worth or limit your potential. The Stoics would have recognized this truth. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." Real self-confidence isn't about thinking you'll always succeed. It's about knowing you'll be okay, even if you fail. Think about that for a moment. Most people's confidence is built on their successes. But true, lasting confidence comes from facing your failures and realizing they didn't destroy you. Each time you fall and get back up, you're not just returning to your previous state, but building a more resilient confidence. There's a powerful Japanese concept called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The result isn't just repaired, it's more beautiful and valuable than the original. This is what true self-confidence looks like. Your challenges and failures aren't flaws to be hidden. They're the gold that makes you unique and valuable. But here's what most people miss about self-confidence. It's not a feeling you wait for. It's a habit you build through small acts of courage. You act confidently and become confident whenever you face fear, speak your truth, or stand your ground. The Stoics had an exercise to build this kind of confidence. They would regularly practice poverty, voluntarily going without comforts they could afford. Why? Because once you know you can handle the worst, you stop fearing it. Your confidence becomes unshakable because it's based on experience, not hope. Now, we can see something remarkable as we bring all 6 habits together. Hard work, patience, sacrifice, consistency, discipline, and self-confidence. They're not separate traits, but different facets of the same diamond. Each one strengthens and supports the others. Think about it. Hard work builds confidence. Patience makes consistency possible. Sacrifice strengthens discipline. They work together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Remember the story we started with? Marcus Aurelius, writing by candlelight? He wasn't just practicing one habit. He was embodying all 6. The hard work of self-reflection, the patience to build wisdom day by day, the sacrifice of comfort for growth, the consistency of daily practice, the discipline to face hard truths, and the self-confidence to know that his efforts mattered, even if no one else ever saw them. So here's your challenge. Don't try to build these habits all at once. Start with 1. Maybe it's making your bed every morning, a small act of discipline. Maybe it's spending 10 minutes in quiet reflection, practicing patience. Maybe it's finally letting go of that comfort zone holding you back, making that crucial sacrifice. Whatever you choose, remember this. Success isn't an event. It's an emergence. Just as a butterfly emerges from a chrysalis, your success will emerge from the daily practice of these habits. The Stoics knew this. Every great achiever has discovered it, and now you know it too. The question isn't whether these habits work. 2,000 years of history prove they do. The question is, will you have the courage to begin? Will you trust the wisdom of the ages and start building these habits in your own life? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Your step begins now. Choose one habit. Start small. Stay consistent. And watch as ancient wisdom transforms your modern life. Remember, the Stoics weren't trying to be extraordinary. They were trying to live in alignment with nature and truth, and in doing so, they became unforgettable. You can do the same. The path is clear. The wisdom is tested. The only question is, are you ready to begin? Let me leave you with one final story, a modern legend that perfectly embodies these 6 Stoic habits. It's about a skinny boy from Madeira, a poor island off Portugal, who was once told he was too small ever to make it in football. Cristiano Ronaldo's story isn't just about football. It's about the relentless application of every principle we've discussed today. Young Ronaldo would sneak out at night with a ball when other kids were sleeping. He'd tie weights to his feet and practice dribbling alone in the dark. That's not just hard work, the kind of sacrifice separating dreamers from achievers. But here's what most people don't know about Ronaldo's journey. At age 11, he left his family to join Sporting CP's academy. A child was leaving everything familiar behind, sleeping in a small dormitory away from his mother's comfort. While other kids his age were playing video games, he was learning the harsh discipline of professional training. There's a famous story about Ronaldo's early days at Manchester United. His teammates would finish training and head home, but Ronaldo, he'd stay behind practicing the same free kick over and over and over. One day, teammate Rio Ferdinand asked him what he was doing. Ronaldo's response, "I'll be the best in the world." He didn't say it with arrogance. He said it with the quiet confidence of someone who understood the power of consistency. The patience part of his journey? Consider this. Ronaldo spent years transforming his game before becoming the goal-scoring machine we know today. He didn't just practice. He systematically rebuilt himself. He changed his running style to prevent knee injuries. He revolutionized his free kick technique 3 separate times. He completely transformed his body through disciplined nutrition and training. But here's what makes Ronaldo's story so powerful for us today. Even at the height of his success, when he had won everything possible, his habits didn't change. His former teammate, Patrice Evra, tells a story about visiting Ronaldo's house for lunch. After a simple, nutrition-focused meal, Ronaldo suggested they play a 2-touch football game in his garden. Then he wanted to do pool exercises. Then he challenged Evra to a sprint. This wasn't a young player trying to prove himself. This was someone who had already won multiple Ballon d'Ors and was already considered one of the greatest of all time. Yet his commitment to these habits remained unshakable. Even more telling is how Ronaldo handled setbacks. When critics said he was finished, when injuries threatened his career, when personal challenges rocked his world, he responded not with words, but with work, with patience, with discipline. Each setback just became another weight in his training, making him stronger. Today, at an age when most footballers have long retired, Ronaldo continues to break records and defy expectations. Why? Because these habits we've discussed are not just things he does, they're who he is. And that's the ultimate lesson from all our Stoic wisdom today. Success isn't about what you do occasionally, it's about who you become consistently. Ronaldo didn't become extraordinary by doing extraordinary things once in a while. He became extraordinary by doing ordinary things with extraordinary consistency and dedication. So as you leave here today, ask yourself, what's your equivalent of Ronaldo's late-night training sessions? What's the dream you're willing to sacrifice for? What habit are you ready to build, not just for a day or a week, but as a fundamental part of who you are? Remember, Greatness isn't reserved for those born with special talents. It's available to anyone willing to embrace these 6 habits with the same dedication as a young boy from Madeira who dared to dream big. The path is clear. The blueprint is proven. Whether your goal is in sports, business, art, or any other field, these 6 Stoic habits remain the same. Hard work, patience, sacrifice, consistency, discipline, self-confidence, not as concepts to admire, but as daily practices to live by. Your journey begins now. And remember, as Ronaldo himself often says, your love makes you strong, but your dedication makes you unstoppable. The choice, as always, is yours. Will you have the courage to begin?